his time is dictated by two figures over the course of this country. George Washington was one of those, and he has a very famous quote about, it is our true policy to steer clear of entangling alliances with any portion of the foreign world. The founding fathers looked at it as a great blessing that we had a big ocean on both sides of the country. The Monroe Doctrine, where he said, European powers are no longer going to try to colonize in the Americas. Thomas Jefferson, and this was kind of a mistake, but Thomas Jefferson, when he was president, he wanted the naval ships built on barges because he knew barges wouldn't make it across the ocean. And if they couldn't make it across the ocean, we couldn't get involved in European affairs. Now, unfortunately, when the British invaded Washington and broke the White House and the Capitol from Britain, it was a shame that all of our naval ships were built on barges. But Jefferson was right on enough things so we could continue. Woodrow Wilson, in 1917, called for Congress to declare war to make the world safe for democracy. And he made it clear that the future of foreign policy would change in the way. He wanted to assert American power and influence around the world because he thought that's what we were here for, and the wealth that that serves, the lives that that means, were just the cost of doing business. So that's kind of where we are. I want to kind of leave you with a couple of quotes. John Stuart Mill, who was a classical liberal, was part of what they call the Scottish Enlightenment, wrote a treatise called On Liberty. And right at the end of that treatise, he wrote, a state which dwarfs its men, even for beneficial purposes, will find that with small men, no great thing can be accomplished. We are in the process of becoming a nation of small men. And right now is the time to prove that we are. Because we may not have another chance after this. It's not going to be won by us electing Republicans. It's not going to be won by, thinking conservatives have all the answers. One of the things I've always kind of enjoyed doing was reading about people's last words and thinking about why did they choose that? Why were they thinking about that when they were ready to die? And I think you should maybe all think about John Adams when he's laying there and he knows his life is coming to an end. His last words were, Thomas Jefferson still survives. Now, why was that important? Why was that important? And does Thomas Jefferson still survive? And y'all are going to in the next generation may not have the opportunity if you don't decide right. That's all I have for you. I hope it was worth waiting for.
Available to answer any questions that you're an expert on. You bet on everything. So, anything you want to know?
Some people have real low expectations.
Just repeat last what you mentioned about John Adams' last words.
Thomas Jefferson still survives.
I heard that part. You said something else that.
Why did he say that? When he's about to die, he knows it. Why is that important? Yes, sir.
I think you were talking about the 17th Amendment earlier. How do we get rid of that? How do we get rid of it?
Well, you see, this is kind of an interesting little thing. People talk about, we need to have a living constitution. The fact of the matter is we do have a living constitution. Because the founders wrote in the Constitution how it could be changed. And they made it real difficult. Because they didn't want it changed really. Well, it can either be something that works its way through Congress or something that's proposed by the States. But it's not an easy thing, which I think where we have 27 amendments, I believe. And so in 200 and, nearly 50 years, so we did amended 27 times, and 10 of those were pretty close to the gun. Yeah, 27 is correct. But there's two ways you can do that. You can either go through the political process in Washington, or it can be the states themselves that propose something. Some constitutional scholars will tell you that when the state proposed something, when they're really getting behind it, it's looking like, my goodness, this could be a done deal. The federal government at that point will step in and say, okay, now we see the light, we're going to go ahead and do that. And they'll try to at least water it down in some way to keep you from going to the actual constitutional position.
But do you think that this Congress would actually do that?
That they would try to stop it, or that they would
That they would try to propose it?
If they did, it would be something bad. Yes,
Always my understanding that this concept of a living constitution started to be spread, promulgated, because they realized they could never amend the Constitution through regular means. So they came up with this living Constitution in order to enable courts to change the Constitution or the legislature to change the Constitution, because I don't have a living Constitution.
That's exactly the reason. And what that does is cut good points.
Circumvents the law.
It fails to recognize that it is the people who are sovereign. And the reason it's so tough is because people didn't want it to begin with. We don't care if you want to go on health care, you're going to have it anyway. That's kind of the attitude. That's all getting back to this point. Yes, sir.
Comments you made about private property. Well, I've heard it said that the most important reason for having private property is because without it, your own person becomes chattel property of the state.
What was the word? What type of property did you say? I think that's certainly a way of looking at it. If your time and your labor and your income and your property are not yours, and you don't think you're somewhere between being a servant and a slave, it's because you don't know what's going on around you. We have a policy study over here, which we can also distribute. Back in 2007, my institute, Virginia Institute, proposed changing the eminent domain law of the state of Virginia. I would like to request, if you don't want to read this whole thing, that's fine. But I would request that you read pages 8 through 21. If you read pages 8 through 21, in Virginia you thought you lived in, it will become clear to you that Virginia is not really like that. When you read 8 through 21, which is just like little 3/4 of a page anecdotes about what has happened to people in Virginia, how their property was taken, you'll think you're living in the Soviet Union. It started in Connecticut with Quid, and that was the Supreme Court. Now, what this law did, when it got passed, Virginia went from actually being one of the worst states in the country in terms of protecting private property to where we've got a very, very good law in place. In one law, we got language that they cannot take your property for job creation. They cannot take your property for economic development. They cannot take your property for tax revenue enhancement. They cannot take your property because that property is blighted, where they used to come in and just take a whole area. No. And another thing they would do, if they needed 10% of your property to build a road, they just take it off. Well, they can't do anything anymore. That's the good news. Bad news is, every single year, the condemners line, which is like VDOT, the power companies, the Virginia Association of Counties, the Virginia Municipal League, there's a new group called Metropolitan Planning Organizations. The last three of those, VECO, Municipal League, Metropolitan Planning Authorities, they're all supported by you. They're all supported with taxpayer dollars so that they can go lobby the legislature to take your property. So when we show up to do that again, we're funding both sides of the road. But those are the people that show up every year since we got the law changed to try to weaken this law, to try to knock out provisions in the law. And that's why this next session, 2011, we're going to try to get a constitutional amendment passed here in Virginia to that problem. And it will be a slugfest, but you know, we won before, although they'll be ready for us this time. Yes, ma'am.
Could you give a definition of true democracy? I like the two rules that she's down the line, but.
Well, I'm not sure my definition would be any better than anybody else's, but pure democracy, I think, would be where you do not have a rule of law and you do not have established rights that would limit the role of government. It would just be, you know, if the people are for it, if they vote for it, we can do it. It doesn't matter what the law says, it doesn't matter what, you know, we can overlook rights.
I've heard that democracy described as the tyranny of the majority.
Yeah. Because they don't